Well, speaking of GT, if you guys had full control over the design of GT, what would you have done differently with it
Kept the rules the same.
from
Yeah.
Z?
Um, well, that's kind of hard. That's not something that I've gone back and thought about. As far as the actual rule sets of GT, like if it was one of those, if I could only change one thing, it would just be a tweak onto the rules. But if we actually got to go back and like fully rehash it all, it probably would have been a lot more like just Dragon Ball Z streamlined. Like same rule set, take out a couple BS things that didn't need to be in the rules. Like that stupid off-colored drill rule where if you had like an orange drill, you could show a black drill in your hand and put it back in your deck. Like that didn't need to be in the game. Nobody ever used that stupid thing. So that was the original plan for GT. Originally was just a streamline of the Dragon Ball Z ones rules, but then things were commanded to be different.
I basically just think keeping the rules the same, and then we would have had to at some point eventually do some type of like actual set cycling, which we ended up doing, but it wasn't handled very well. I would have just liked to be able to handle that whole situation better, and then not make doubles of cards, like instead of making an epic battle of whatever.
Yeah,
Titanic
keep it Time as the Warriors.
Just bring back Time as the Warriors tool. I mean, just reprinting a common isn't going to hurt the secondary market on a common. Just a few tweaks like that. And then it would have been cool because then the power level of the GT cards would have been closer to the power level of the old Z cards and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. If it was a full revamp, that's probably what it would have been.
Another question that we have here is why wasn't there new cards made to support more of the old main personalities that weren't good enough to be used in the game on a regular basis?
Sometimes it was because of content in the show. Like when we came out with World Game Saga, we had to use the majority of the pictures and images from World Games. So if characters actually didn't appear in certain sagas, there's not a whole lot from a design perspective unless we're able to sneak in some way through like movie promo subsets or other ways of really helping them. And we eventually did try to help out, a couple of personalities, especially once they came back in for cameo appearances in the future. Like we tried to help Yamcha out, I believe, in World Games. And he was sitting there kicking the crap out of all the Celestial Warriors and everything. But most of the time, it was that combined with, we want to get the new sets to sell, and every storyline has these like main characters, no pun intended, that are kind of the focus of the saga in and of itself. And so a lot of times we're trying more to build and support those characters because of the latest set that's being released and what the set's supposed to be focused around.
In a lot of ways, too, the game was designed more around the styles and not necessarily the individual characters, with the exception of a few things. But I mean, most of the time it was more like you were progressing the red style or the green or the blue style or something like that, not necessarily just like trying to make Goku better all the time. It just kind of happened that way.
Yeah.
Because he always got new he always got new character cards every time their character cards were made.
Oh yeah, he was the main character of the show. We couldn't have a set without cards helping.
Without a Goku, yeah, you had to have him. He was a marketing bullet point on a list. It's like you have to have a new Goku, you have to have a new Vegeta.
Yeah, whereas in we can't do more new Nappa stuff. We were able to find a way to cheat around it in GT for the third set, but I mean, no Nappa, no Raditz. How we can't really make cards for them. Can't make cards for pretty much anybody that dies once they're dead.
Well,
and
that was
the
just
show
because
doesn't let them come back.
It was based on sagas too. So if it had ever gotten to a point where we were no longer just following the storyline of the game, and that we followed the storyline of the game because we wanted to be relevant to what was being shown on TV. So like if they're showing Kid Buu and stuff on TV, our newest sets are Kid Buu, so it's like free marketing for those products.
That's actually part of the reason why so many, and it was a point that was somewhat valid, of Score coming out with some sets way too quickly. because ever since Trunk Saga, even though Trunk Saga got super delayed, the whole goal after Trunk Saga was we need to hurry up and we need to catch up with what's being shown on TV. If we can have a set come out that matches what's currently being aired, we'll get so much more of a stronger boost because of it really correlating to the newest stuff that's being shown. So, you know, we were really trying to catch up with the show in many respects until we finally did at the very end.
All right. Well, the next question I have on my list here is why did Piccolo the Trained receive so many changes?
The best way to explain it is too many cooks in the kitchen. Throughout, ever since, at first, let me start this over. Sorry, my brain's just running through so many different little details. At very first, there was a discussion on if we should even do anything about Piccolo the Trained. And that in our little rules committee that we had meetings every week, sometimes more than once a week. You know, a small crowd of us, like myself, IQ, Josh McManus, Josh Minnan, you know, Chaz would sometimes be in there, but, you know, a lot of times he would be more like the final arbitrator. You know, if we couldn't come to a consensus, we would have to go with him, and he'd be the tiebreaker, kind of like the vice president in Congress. So once we finally did come to a decision that, yeah, we need to fix him so that, you know, the personality that somebody chooses matters again. Because it was definitely causing a problem. And we were trying to find the right way of fixing him without outright banning him. But part of the issues came into getting everybody to agree that that was necessarily the right fix. And so a lot of times, Piccolo the Trained was one of the most contested cards as far as what should be done with it. The only two other cards probably fitting in that category or three cards being Freestyle Mastery when it was still being developed, Tap Car, and Cosmic Backlash. So we tried to come up with some ideas, and what happened was when we played around with it in house, like it seemed to be like a good idea. But then when we finally released it out there to the players, it ended up not being so. And sometimes we would get so focused on the current metagame and environment that we would totally forget, you know, the cards that we had just designed and made. So, for example, when we made the errata on Piccolo the Trained to where every time his ability was used, he gained 2 anger, we were like, oh, that's perfect. That'll allow them to still get to use his ability for a little bit, and then after 2 or 3 combats of use, you know, he's forced up a level, you know, so he won't get that ability again. So that's great. That'll be a perfect fix. You know, we had totally forgotten that we had just designed, and it was getting ready to be released, Supreme Kai's Key Push, which dropped you a level.
And so, 11 life cards.
Yeah, and it was really strong for doing it.
Yeah, and then his power just sets you up to do it again, and then you had energy combat tutors in that deck.
Yeah, so that, and through each one of those iterations, like literally the decision to make that change was a 3-2 margin. Like my memory's not perfect enough to know in each iteration like who came up with it and who was on what side, but like literally every single time up until the very last change, which kind of came epiphany, like we were like, man, well, if we just take the word constant off of it, then they can't, you know, they have to use their action to use it, so you can declare combat against them and still get to use your power, and any when entering combat powers would still get to be, oh, okay, there we go. And that final one was the one that everybody pretty much agreed on in consensus. But up until then, like, that idea hadn't even come across our mind. We were all, the group of us, you know, constantly arguing and debating our points, and, oh, well, we should try to fix them this way, and we should try to fix them that way. And because we had no one person be like the ultimate decider and decision maker, you know, listen to everybody's arguments and then go, well, I believe we should do this and try to move forward, that we got too caught up in that, and so we were never able to find the best solution. And it wasn't until we started reaching that point, that we were able to have more focused minds and be able to find what really was the simplest solution to them, which was taking constant off of it.
Why was Score so quick to errata things and not ban things?
Because
I think
if you ban a card is terrible. The banning your card as a score thing. Banning a card was the last line of defense.
Okay, I guess with Score's situation where the playtesting has always been kind of mediocre, you would come out with sets and you'd have a ton of errata. So I guess you can't just ban everything that has to be changed.
Correct.
So
but it's not just that. But we didn't want people to enter a situation where, you buy your booster pack and you pull your rare and you're like, yes, we got oh, damn it, that rare was a banned card. So to me as a player, that pack was a waste of money now.
But you'd rather have them open the pack and then the card doesn't do what it says?
Well, I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect at all, man. I'm just saying that was our line of thought, and that's why, it wasn't until we realized that, an errata, we cannot come up with an errata that fixes this card without making him too ugly. And Piccolo the Train did dance that line. A lot of those changes, especially the weird ones, especially the Raise to Anger, were because that was the last line and idea that could come up with before we went, okay, he's going to have to be banned. We as a company, as a group, we wanted to save banning as the very last thing and wanted to try every other avenue possibility that we could think of before having to make the decision, oh, okay,
was that
we're going to have to make that worthless cardboard.
Was that something you guys were conscious of, how big the errata? I just bring this up because
Oh yes, ever
errata
since freaking Saiyan Saga, man.
Is free. I know the Saiyan Saga. The Saiyan Saga, if you didn't have so much of it to sell, you could have just banned it from tournaments, and I don't think anybody would have cared. Because the cards, a lot of the cards didn't make any sense.
Man, like that T-Rex defense. Oh my goodness.
Well,
the errata for Saiyan Saga was ridiculous.
Well, they were all written like they were supposed to be pages out of a D&D book. Well, what's the name of the guy who designed Saiyan Saga? I can't think of his name now.
Sir Jim Ward.
Ward, yes. I met Jim Ward years later, and I talked to him for a little bit, and I talked to him about that set, and I'm not quite so sure he'd ever actually designed a card game. He had written tons and tons and tons of role-playing books, and
he designed Spellfire, man.
That's right. Oh, that's a game I haven't thought about in years. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's like the second card game ever made.
Yeah. Furthermore, like that thing I just talked about, the too many cooks in the kitchen, part of the reason our errata got so big is because we'd get into arguments about whether stuff would even need to be in there or not. And the decision always leaned towards, well, I guess maybe we should, because if we're having this type of question, then somebody else out there may be having this type of question. On top of, well, we're getting so many email questions about this, so let's start to put that in. And then it started turning into, well, we just got questions about this, let's start putting that in. So yeah, we were quite conscious of how big the CRD was just from the get-go when we had to make it the first time. It took freaking forever to go through the Saiyan Saga and fix everything, let alone go when we went through the Trunk Saga revamps and coming up with the fence shields and all those other changes. We were pretty conscious of it, but in the end we took that as that's one of our small negatives, but we would rather have that negative than ban the card and make it worthless cardboard.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Because one thing a lot of other companies do too is most of the established games that are out now, if a card comes out and it's too powerful, it's not like it's a disruptive force generally in the short term, because the card will eventually rotate out and go into a format where it's not abusive anymore.